All right. Aloha kakahiaka, everyone. I'm Peter Kay. Today is June 24th, and you are on the Aloha Friday Hawaii Real Estate Show. We are really glad to have you here. A bunch of people have already jumped in, of course, but we're going to kind of warm up the microphones and warm up the audience over here. Joan jumped in first. Hey, Joan. Aloha, everyone, from another day in paradise. Joan, those are the famous words. Sometimes it's said in other ways, but that's the great way to say it, Joan. And Chris is with us. Chris Longley, happy Aloha Kakahiaka Friday. Excellent, Chris. Great to have you with us. And Auntie Joyce, of course, is here. Good morning. Remember, you do what you can, and God will do what you can't. Love that. Love that. That's almost like a Proverbs. There's a bunch of Proverbs lines that are kind of like that. Neil's with, hey, Neil, how's it, Neil? Neil is a member of the Islander Ohana. We're actually having our last meeting of the cohort tomorrow. And Judy's back. Judy, welcome. Hey, Judy, great to have you back, Judy. Aloha, everyone. Judy's got some is a Islander Ohana alumni member. And let's see, Richard is back. Richard Pence, aloha from Queens, New York. Great to see you, Rich. Welcome back, everybody. Let's warm up our microphones here. Let's go clockwise. Let's go Scott and then Dylan. Scott, what's going on? What's the aloha shirt? What's happening?
Yeah, we got a little bit of rain today. I was going to actually try to attempt this outside for the first time, but yeah, it's raining all morning, so that wasn't going to work. But I think I got a rin spooner here. I think this is breadfruit. Ulu is what they call it, but I'm not real sure. At our restaurant on the Big Island, our chef, he used to be the executive sous chef at the Ritz-Carlton a long time ago, but he used to go out and he'd get the breadfruit, he'd cut it up like French fries, and he'd deep fry it. Man, it had such a sweet taste to it when he got done making it. It was pretty awesome. So
Breadfruit is a classic. My wife is a Cook Islander, and the Cook Islands breadfruit is a fundamental staple. It's like bread, so to speak. And so they have all kinds of ways to kind of cook and eat breadfruit. A few more folks have joined us. Auntie Joyce has given Scott the heads up. Welcome to the top of the screen. Yeah, you know what happens, Auntie Joyce, is it takes the order. Okay, here's a secret just between us. Okay, so don't tell anyone that the order comes in as they join the backstage, as they jump into the green room. That's how you can tell kind of who's first, who came in first and second. Christy, aloha from Reno, Nevada. Welcome, Christy. I remember you. I remember your face actually. Welcome back from Reno, Nevada. And Norm is back with us. Norm is also a member of the Islander Ohana. Recently went out to the Big Island for a vacay. Aloha to all. Another day in the high 90s. Well, Bernard, Norm, paradise is right around the corner. I said Bernard because Bernard's here. Hey, Bernard, how's it going, buddy? Hello, everyone. Good to see you, Bernard. Bernard is working with Scott to find a great place for him on Oahu. So, Dylan, we're still warming up the mics here. What's going on, buddy? Tell us about your shirt and about how you got that shirt, especially.
Well, this is a living hula shirt. My go-to local designer here. I actually got two. I got one in brown and one in black. My wife got them recently for an event we went to, so I could have a uniform change in between. But she was just ironing it. I put it on at 1 minute prior to us going live because I was busy this morning and neglected to get my shirt ironed. So luckily, I have a assistant that does that. But I just got back from Florida. I was in Florida all week. Flew back yesterday. It took me I was up for almost 24 hours because you leave in the morning in Florida and then you get back in the afternoon in Hawaii, but it takes forever to get here. And definitely reminded me that, depending on where you want to live with great weather, the weather here is so much better than Florida. I mean, it's nice in Florida, but it's hot and humid and just tons of people. It's beautiful, but I mean, you just get reminded when you get off the plane here. And even at the airport where it's about as hot as it could possibly be, it's not as bad. You got the cool trade winds. I mean, just clear reminder that we just got the most perfect weather here. It's ridiculous. So
it is ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean,
it's almost unreal and unfair, when you go to other places.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's really unbelievable. The weather is so darn I remember my dad was when one of the first times he visited here way back. What blew him away is, and I use this term all the time when I on the weather. I've done a whole series of YouTubes on the weather for each and every month, and the common theme, and this is borrowed from my dad, was that the weather is so perfect, hotels don't have doors. hotel lobbies don't have doors.
True.
That's it. Just stop
Yep.
right there. Stop right
Every
there.
lobby in Hawaii is open air. It flows right
Every
through.
single,
Yeah.
I don't think of there may be some, but there's not a hotel lobby I know of any kind of prominent hotel that has doors on it. I mean, they've got covers for rain and things like that, but there's no doors, and that tells you everything. Hey, so look, gang, it's 9 o'clock. Someone's missing, right? Everyone, Heidi's missing. We hope she's going to join us. She's still part of the show. Heidi, if hopefully you're connecting in. If you jump in, we'll love to have you. But we're gonna move on. We got some news. I want to kind of let's go to our normal news segment. I got a couple of fun things and some interesting things to see if this kind of works. You let me know what you all think about this. So hey, the world's we have the world's oldest captive clam has passed away, sadly. You didn't know this, right? The Waikiki Aquarium has had the oldest captive clam. This thing was 200 pounds. They had it for 30 years. It was a guest favorite, and sadly that clam is no longer with us. So we're sad to see that. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I never heard about that before. Didn't know that we had the oldest captive clam at the Waikiki Aquarium. Anyway, inflation. We hear all kinds of stories of inflation. Have you heard this one? We're getting increased pet surrenders. People are bringing in their pets in record numbers to animal shelters. Because presumably inflation is making it hard for people to make ends meet. And unfortunately, pets got to go, which is kind of sad. And I hope that's not a long-term trend, but it's a sad trend. It is what it is. Electric Seaglider. So check this out, gang. I got a cool photo here I want to show you. So there's a company, they're in discussion with one of the local small airlines, Mokulele Airlines, if I'm not mistaken, and they're in talks to do something like this. You see this thing here? This is an electric seaplane. Apparently, this electric seaplane flies at, just above the sort of skims over the top of the water and functions as technically it's a boat. So it takes off from harbors. It doesn't take off from the airport. And because it's classified as a boat, because it doesn't fly too high either, it just flies using what's called ground effect, which allows an aircraft to fly at relatively higher efficiency just above the ground, just above the sea level. Anyway, so that's kind of fun. That's a little piece of interesting news over there that we've got going on, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see what that's going to happen. They're going to start with a 12-passenger model, but later, if it goes out well, they could expand to a 50 to 100-passenger model. So that's kind of cool. Another thing, free stores. Have you heard? Is this? I'd be curious, gang. Do you folks have this free stores? So there's this thing that's kind of been going on in Hawaii. It's kind of started out, and it's the idea that there's this community thing. It's kind of not centrally organized. It's a kind of a ground up kind of a thing going on where they're setting up free stores throughout the neighborhoods, and they're basically just like a corner. It's like a corner, street corner. And people calling it a free store, and there's a map on. You can kind of Google it and go to it, and people put like free stuff that they want to give away. And it's interesting. It says, take, act without shame, leave, share without condition, and whatever's, trust without apology. So I thought that's kind of a cool thing. I'd be curious if you folks are getting anything like that on the mainland. Is there any kind of a free store concept? Check that out and let me know if you have anything like that. And then finally, maybe we can, I'd like to hear if Heidi was here would be good, but it's okay. We got Dylan and Scott. Monster homes are becoming a bigger issue. I think they're becoming a bigger issue. There's a story of a monster home project on Maui, which has caused some controversy. In fact, I got a picture for you. So check this out, gang. Check out this picture. Now, this is what you call a monster home. Now, look at that thing. Now, if you look at the scale of that, you could see the homes next to it. They give you a sense. That's a home. That's not a resort. That's a home. And somehow there's all kinds of controversy. It flew under the radar. Somehow mysteriously this home was approved by the Department of Planning and Permitting. No one knows how it happened. How dare they? And anyway, there's all kinds of controversy now. They're trying to convert it back into a community housing sort of thing, or a community like a museum, a community cultural center. We'll see what's going on. There's all kinds of. There was actually to Scott. There was another Monster home. Monster home is what the by the way. So monster home is the term that we use for, as you might guess, these gigantic homes that seem to be, not correctly based, not built according to zoning laws. They're ginormous, like that house that you saw. I haven't seen one that big on Oahu, but there's a lot of them, and laws have been kind of coming down on it. There's been one on Oahu. Scott, you may know about this one on Sierra Drive in Kamuki, where there was a big monster home that they were starting to construct it, but it was stopped. Anyway, those are the quick news, gang, about what's going on in Hawaii. I'd be curious of what you folks, if those any free homes and that you've seen on the mainland. And again, look at the perfect weather that we talked about. Again, the best thing I love about Hawaii's weather, look at those consistencies: 82 degrees all the way across, 73 at the low, 82 as a high every single day. That's what's amazing about Hawaii. All right, let's move on to our friends over here. Let's go counterclockwise to Dylan and then Scott. Give us the update, news, market updates. What's happening, Dylan? Yeah.
The first thing, of course, I want to react to the monster home thing, right? It's not really a problem here on the Big Island, or hasn't been yet, but it's always funny to me when government reacts to stuff like that. It doesn't look in the mirror. Like, why do people do that? It's because government has completely failed to create affordable housing or create the opportunity to build that stuff in the right areas, or have the zoning available so people can do that in the right areas. So what do? They figure out a way to skirt the law and do it anyways. And so it's always interesting when those things come up and there isn't a self-reflection on why is it happening in the first place, right? Because it's just not people being malicious. It's people that are doing what they got to do, and maximize their property value, and essentially what they're doing is creating affordable housing, right? I mean, they're making apartment buildings that are supposed to be in zoning for single family homes, but the net effect is that there are people that need places to live, and a lot of times those monster homes provide that, right? They're separate studios with bathrooms, and it's the private sector providing what the government has made it really hard to do, or has failed to do. So just the interesting
Dylan,
phenomenon here in Hawaii.
Dylan, come on, you know better. This is evil corporations and horrible landowners, slumlords that are taking advantage of everyone. You know better than that.
Absolutely.
It's not a response to what people want in affordable housing. Come on, you know better than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, what else?
So back to the market. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but
yeah, go ahead.
So the interesting thing about the market right now is I feel like the faucet turned off 10 days ago. Once interest rates went up, I mean, they were touching almost 7% at one point. We saw a noticeable shift where you'd put a house on the market, properly priced, do the open house for 3 days, and you'd have 2 to 4 people come by each day, when normally you'd have 25 people come in every day. No offers, open house ends, 4 days go by, you don't get any showing requests. It's eerie, the shift, and not just homes, condos. We had several different, and we're seeing a bunch of new listings come on the market. So within the team, in the last 10 days, we probably put 6 or 7 new properties on the market, and we're seeing a similar phenomenon with all of them. So definitely the interest rates and the stock market is having an effect on people's, I think, the buyer demand and the buyer psyche. I don't think it's going to lead to any enormous drop in prices or anything, but we're going to go back to a more balanced market where you actually have to do some marketing to sell a listing and some negotiating. Buyers are not going to have to give up all their rights and all their inspections and all their due diligence in order to get into a house because of 10 offers. So there is clearly a shift happening right now. And the data point that I've been looking at is, if you looked at a year ago, there were 1,400 properties on the market on the Big Island, almost 1,600 in escrow. So there were more under contract than there were available to buy a year ago. Today, there are 1,100 in escrow and almost 1,600 active. So we're going back to that ratio where there are more active properties on the market than there are in escrow. We're nowhere near normal historical levels where it's normally a 2 to 3 to 1 difference between available versus under contract, but we're trending in the direction back to a normal market, because it has been abnormal for a very long time.
So the bananas are finally falling off the tree. If we could use we used to always say it's the market's so bananas, right?
The bananas have ripened. Yeah.
The bananas have ripened. Yeah.
Time to make banana bread.
The bananas have ripened. Hey, let's catch up on a few more of our friends who have joined in before we get to you, Scott. Alex kicked in. Aloha from the Westin in Maui. Be here for 7 nights. That's a beautiful property, man. I hope you're enjoying yourself. And it's a beautiful place, Alex. Maui has a special place in my heart. It's where I fell in love in Hawaii. Auntie Joyce says the seaplane doesn't look safe. What happens if they get near a big wave? Do you wear swimsuits on the plane? Well, Auntie Joyce, I'll tell you one thing. I would not be the one. There it is. I would not be the first passenger on that plane. Look, this is a photo to kind of for effects. These things fly high enough. And also, if you think about it, Auntie Joyce, waves out there in the middle of the ocean are not like like big cresting waves that break on the near the shore. That being said, it's going to take some finesse. You're not going to fly a few inches above the ground. You're going to fly hopefully a few feet off the ground. If I'm not mistaken, if I pull out my physics knowledge correctly, ground effects, correct me if I'm wrong, any pilots on there who know about this, for the ground effect to work, you cannot be more than half of the wingspan of the aircraft high. So if it's a 100-foot wingspan, you're 50 feet above. 50 feet would be the limit. So I don't know if that matters or not, but anyway, Auntie Joyce, I would not be the first person who gets on that plane. I would let that roll for a few while, but it could be fun. It could be interesting.
Yeah, I'd rather crash on that in the ocean than crash in a regular plane on the overland. So
yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. It's a good point. And so the other thing too is it is a boat. It is a boat. So worst comes to worst, it literally it should touch down and land in the water because it's a boat. So
my question is, how does it land in rough seas? Because like lake planes and stuff, and river planes, they're relatively flat surfaces when you land, where our oceans are not flat a lot of the time. Even when it's calm seas, they're not flat. If you've ever been out in the ocean, there's big swells and yeah.
It's going to be fun to kind of see when this thing kind of takes off, but I can definitely see a situation where, on rough days, ain't going to be no flights.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ain't give me no. If I don't want to bring up all kinds of old skeletons from the past, but right.
Super Ferry. Yeah.
Thank you. You were going to say it.
Ferry.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. Gang, to catch everybody else out here real fast. It was a project a long time ago called the Super Ferry. Was this amazing ferry, big enough to hold cars. And it was this thing where basically you could drive to the neighbor islands. Literally, you would get on the ferry, you would take you to Maui, and you'd go off. And that was met with all kinds of protests. Man, long story, but it made me think of the ferry. But to the rough seas point, there was a problem with people getting seasick on the ferry. They won't get seasick on this, but then again, we'll have to see if it keeps flying around. Anyway, a few more friends have joined us. Hold on here, Scott. We'll get to you, buddy. Val is back. Hey, Val, welcome back. Aloha all. Thank you, Val, for and the Shaka. Love the Shaka icon. Patrick is back. Hey, Patrick, good to see you, buddy. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Always great to see. Yeah, Chris, Christy would be angry if it blocked my view. This is about the monster house. Christy, and it ain't just monster house that are doing it. What about condos? There's some beautiful places that, where you were once in a small home in the middle of somewhere urban Honolulu and a big condo went up and there you go. So losing views is unfortunately a part of life. You want to think about that when you get that home. And Supernova. Aloha Supernova is from Manhattan. Awesome. Hope you're having a good time there, Supernova in Manhattan. Judy, she Googled if there are free stores near me. It came up with the food pantry in the Goodwill store. Not quite the free store we kind of were thinking of, right? This is like this is a peer-to-peer free store. It's kind of fun, actually. I wonder if it's a Hawaii only thing. That'd be interesting. Uncle Jim is back. Jim Stevenson. Aloha, everyone. Jim, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us. Mark has joined us. Aloha, Mark. Excellent. Good to see you, buddy. Norm, for us, the slowdown has moved up our timetable for moving. I think the market here in the San Francisco Bay Area is still warmer. It all depends, right? This could be the time to make the move. Could be the time to make the move. Certainly, as we said, the curve is bending, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, right? The curve is starting to bend. The bananas have ripened. Kelly feels that I should worry about the seaplane hitting breaching whales as well. This was a big concern with the Super Ferry. Breaching whales, a big concern. But again, this thing is going to fly higher than, it's not going to skim inches above the water. It's going to skim higher. But then again, breaching whales could be a thing. Man, we got a lot of engineers on this show. Forward-looking radar. I wish I knew I would forward these comments to the airline. Forward-looking radar and Oh, for helicopters, full rotor disc length. Okay, thank you. That's the ground effect, full rotor disc length. Man, this is, you never know what you're gonna get on the show. It's awesome. Wind shear makes for a nosedive. Boeing had a problem with nosedives, but that wasn't the technology of the nose. Andre, like I said, I ain't going to be the first guy on this thing. Alex, there's a few monster homes I can see here in Maui from my hotel. Yeah, and that's the question. If they're, how monstrous are they? Do they fit within the zoning laws or not? And to Dylan's point, and Gianna is with us. Aloha and howdy from Texas. Welcome back. It's been a while, if I'm not mistaken, Gianna. Welcome back to us. And then Juliana. Hey, Juliana, how's it? Good to see you again. Aloha. All right, that cues up everybody. Hey, if you got any questions, we got a couple things that we're going to talk about. Again, I tell you all this. You all get priority because you're live. You're with us. You're hanging out with us. You took your Friday morning to be with us, or Friday afternoon, depending on where you're at. Your questions go first. Pop them in the comments. Scott, what's going on, buddy? Give us the update. Oh, wait a minute. Did we? Yeah. Okay. It's your turn. Yeah. It's Oahu's news. I lost track. I was talking about your Aloha shirt a minute ago. All right, Scott, give us the update.
Yeah, the monster home one. That one actually hits home for me. I deal with it a lot. Not only have I chatted with agents that work with me, I've had a lot of in-depth conversations about this, because when you see, you go through Kaimuki and Kapahulu and they're starting to build setback to setback, or they have been for years here, and it's all concrete. There's no grass, no greenery. It's starting to change the landscape of the community, which hits a sore spot for me. Part of what I do, what I try to do with the development side for me, is keep the integrity of the neighborhood the same. And for once, a lot of these monster homes, some of them were like 16 bedrooms, 17 baths, 16 wet bars. They all have a wet bar in every bedroom. They're literally an apartment complex.
To interrupt, thank you so much for pointing that out. Because when you say monster, it doesn't mean just big. 16 bedrooms, right? So
some were even 20.
20,
right? Yeah. 20 and 20. And so the funny thing is that none of them are illegal. If they went through permitting and got permitting, they were legal and they got approval. The problem is the zoning laws were so loose. And I actually had to go and testify down at city council for this when I was actually in the middle of that Hauula project. I was doing a two home CPR, had 3-bedroom, 3-bath, and 3-bedroom, 3-bath. But because it was 2 homes on one lot, the zoning allowed for that. I actually fell into that area. We got permit approval, and then they changed the rules. City council did, to try to start restricting this, and we fell into that category. And they tried to pass a bill to say, hey, if we've given you approval for the permit, we can take it away from you. And we were in the middle of the construction, so I had to go down there and testify in front of them and say, look, I'm building affordable housing. You're going to train wreck, a few bad apples are going to be sideswiped. You can't give someone approval and take it away. But so they ended up getting rid of that part, but they now started putting all these restrictions in. One is 30% permeation rate on your property so that water can absorb. Otherwise, if you're all concrete, now where's all that rainwater go? It goes onto your neighbors, goes into storm drains that can't handle it. The others are, they limited to a certain number of wet bars per the zoning. So like one, if you got 6,000 square feet, it's like 1 wet bar. They've limited the number of bathrooms. They've started to cut down. If you go a certain percentage of the lot, you have to be able to have like 6 parking, and they have to be able to turn around and go forward out of the property rather than back out. So they're getting there, but there's already been a lot of damage done. There's been a few that were built without permits, but yeah, it's changing the landscape of the neighborhoods here. And I understand the need for the bigger homes because it's an affordability thing, and you do multi-generational living. But people push the envelope, and they're able to get away with more, to where it starts to impact the community. The cars spill out onto the streets. You're impacting your neighbors at that point. They're parking all down the street, and nobody else can have street parking. So it is a problem that needs to be addressed. And the reality part of it is there's an affordability issue, and the other part of it is you got people who are really pushing the envelope on the zoning.
It's always a balance, right? So I think the other part, now what's interesting about that is that prior to these, well, I don't know if it was prior or not, but related to this short-term vacation rental zoning and stuff with the Airbnb craze, you had some of these properties. If you look at this thing, right? So let me pull this up on the screen. it's not hard to envision that being a hotel, right? And if that's an Airbnb, right? It's an Airbnb, it's an Airbnb small boutique hotel in the middle of a residential area. It's questionable. And these homes were built, like you said, 16 bedrooms, each with a wet bar, quote, wet bar, which, you put a hot plate and you've got a little unit, right? You have a little kind of a livable unit. And if it's in a great area near the beach, etc., it's an Airbnb. It's a hotel. So there's a balance. But to Dylan's point, there's also market pressures, right? The reason why the black market exists is because people want stuff that the government's stopping them from having, right? So you have to always kind of strike that balance, and you have to kind of set it up.
One of the things the county does here to somewhat prevent that is a lot of times if you go for permits to do an addition to your home or like enclose your downstairs and create a separate unit, they make you sign an affidavit saying that it will only be used for single family home residence purposes and you will not rent it. So, whether how well they enforce that or follow up on it is one thing, but at least they have a mechanism in place where if someone were to complain about what you were doing it for, you can't use it as a rental. Basically, you can only use it as a multi-generational home or have, parents live in it or whatever it is. So that's one of the functions the county puts on your imposes on your property here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's an important one that they've changed here. They changed it 2 or 3 years ago, and I actually had to, because the house in front here and I have the Ohana in the back. I was required to sign actually 2 different affidavits, one for a covenants restriction, but they changed the wet bar definition. It used to be you couldn't have all 3 elements. You could have the 220 for the range, you could have the sink or the refrigerator, but not all 3. And they've changed that now. They've gone over here and because everyone would put the 220 in the sink, and the refrigerator is a regular plug. So then when the permits close, you come in and you add the refrigerator easily, and now you got a full kitchen and nobody knows about it. So what they've changed it to now is you can't have the 220. The wet bar is only a sink and a refrigerator classified. So now they've put that restriction in, and you have to sign an affidavit and whatnot. But the problem is once you close the permit, who's going to enforce that? The only way that gets enforced is if a neighbor complains or somebody complains, and an inspector has to come out and have a look. The other interesting one that I had was this was weird. I actually took the certification for the erosion control component for our development property. I was the certified person responsible to do all the reports to make sure our erosion control on our lot was correct. So you got to have certain things. What they don't want is you have all that dirt. They don't want it going out into the ocean because it'll kill the coral. It runs off into neighbors' places. So you got to do certain measures to keep it in check. And if something's not right, you're supposed to put it on a report and submit it. Well, how am I the owner and I'm the guy that's supposed to police myself? Like, that makes no sense. But it was interesting getting the certification because I now understand the why. And it's part of it is coral protection and shoreline protection and sea life protection. When you have all that mud going into the ocean, it's going to cause real problems. And the interesting thing, that's part of the reason the permeation component is in there. When it rains, you need 30% of your property to be able to absorb that water, or it goes elsewhere. I walked around the neighborhood and I see so many newer homes where they close the permit and then they'll come back and they'll have somebody pave the concrete portion. And so it totally defeats the purpose of the intention of what they were trying to put in there. And I'm like, you're never going to control that. And who's going to complain? What neighbors are going to complain about that? And the homeowner's never educated like I was going through that certification to understand the why. So they're ignorant to the consequences and are only looking at their small lot and how it serves their purpose.
Man, this it's kind of funny. It starts out as a simple topic, and it got pretty darn deep. No, I appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of depth over here, and I have to do. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this because I didn't start it, but Chris did. Chris, this is you, buddy. Chris said, "Hey, I have to say, Peter K, you have an amazing show and crew, and your website is very informative as well. Mahalo for doing this. Very informative. I actually go back and watch previous shows again." Chris, thanks, buddy. It ain't me. It's these guys right over here and Heidi. It's really that's what makes. I just put the slides together and kind of talk. But Chris, thanks for the comments. And this was a great example, right? This is a great example. We talk about one topic and bam, you get some really good depth. If you kind of want to know what's going on with monster homes, you just got You just got educated big time, big time. All right, let's move on. Before Douglas Lim, aloha, retired and moved from Chicago to Honolulu. Awesome, Douglas. Hey, Douglas, what part of Chicago? I was born there. I was born on the northwest side of Chicago, near somewhat close to O'Hare Field. Where are you from in Chicago, Douglas? I'd be curious about what that is. All right, keep those questions coming. We're going to move on to our next topic. I thought that we would talk about something fun today. So there was an interesting story that came on to the media, Civil Beat. Actually, it's one of the online sort of newspapers, if you will, and it talked about. And said the story was basically saying that Hawaii may not be the richest state, but it's one of the happiest. So kind of what the article talked about was it basically said that, Hawaii has a very large percentage of people that are sort of living on the edge, financially, that having a hard time making ends meet. The pay's not so hot. However, so we kind of rank low on the economic scale. I think I mentioned this before in a previous show. We're kind of ranking low on the economic scale. We're near the bottom of the barrel if you kind of any sort of economic measurements. Yeah, we did talk about that at the previous show. We're at the bottom pretty much of all the economic measurements, right? Always however, we're at the top of the happiness measurements. So if there's surveys that talk about happies, that we rank consistently, rank high. It says in studies looking at well-being, Hawaii ranks second after Massachusetts in 2021 and ranked in the top 10, usually in the top spot year after year after year. Gallup was mentioned. So here's the interesting part, right? So this is really what Hawaii is all about, right? The Hawaii is that there is a trade-off. There's what we call it, the price of paradise. Economically, if you're looking at getting rich, Hawaii's probably not the right place for you. Not to say that it can happen, but it's probably not the right place for you. This is not the place you want to go to if you kind of, quote, want to get rich, but it is the place where you want to go to if you want to live happy. And so that's the question. And that's the question for you all, right? The question for you all is, what's your trade-off, right? If you had a choice, right? And let's just make it really, really clear. Let's just kind of make it, let's just kind of really kind of lay this out, right? Here's the choice, gang. And I'd love to hear what you think. If the choice was you're gonna barely get by, you are going to get by, but you're going to barely get by. You're just going to live sort of and let's just say a minimal level, whatever that means, right? Your choice is minimal level and happy in Hawaii, minimal level and happy, or all the creature comforts you could ever ask for, but you're living in a place that you don't really like. It's not Hawaii. You're not quite happy with the environment, but you got the big 5,000 square foot home with the pool and the 4-car garage and the 4 cars and all the kind of good stuff. And you're going out and you're enjoying it. And you got great clothes and all this. You got all the creature comforts. What is it? What's your trade-off? Happy or wealthy? You can't have both. Maybe that's an easier way to say it. You want happy or wealthy? What would you take? It's almost an obvious question for me, but that's the question. So I'd like to kind of get, why don't we kind of go, let's go Dylan and then Scott. Dylan, this is always a choice, right? This is a choice for you, for your family, for your life. You lived on the mainland for a while. You've come back. And how do you describe this trade-off for you? How did you make this trade-off? What was kind of going around? Obviously, we know what you've chosen. I want to know kind of how you got there and how you came to it and the things that you thought of and things that you'd like to share.
Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, there's no better place to raise kids. There's no better place to live. There's no better quality of life. Is there a lot of things that are frustrating about Hawaii and, not perfect? Absolutely. But they're easy to overlook. And that's one of the things I think, one of the reasons why sometimes the systemic or the government stuff doesn't change is because people aren't that motivated to get involved politically here, because it's just, life is so good, right? You get up in the morning and you go, the water turns on, the roads are there, the schools are okay. I mean, there isn't a huge incentive to be active in changing the stuff that frustrates you, because there's so much good, positive stuff to look around at every single day. So yeah, to me, I mean, we got one life to live, right? And you can't take the money with you. So I'd rather die broke in Hawaii than rich in, someplace I was miserable in. So, that's why and that's why I gotta go to the mainland every once in a while to remember that. You know, I mean, I don't ever take it for granted, but it strengthens that mindset when I go somewhere in the mainland. And I think, man, especially like a place like Vegas, I love visiting Vegas, you know, for a few days and doing the whole Vegas thing. But I just think like I would be miserable if I had to live here. And but could I afford a way bigger house and maybe private school for my kids, and you know, who knows what else, you know, they're on the same amount of income probably, but definitely not a place I would want to live every single day.
Alex said it, man. One life to live. That's it. That is it right there. I mean, was that you had a great line that kind of flew by me. You said, I'd rather die poor and how was that?
Yeah. I'd rather die broken happy than rich and rich and unhappy. So.
Yeah. That is the fundament, and Hawaii really kind of brings that to really kind of makes that sort of obvious, right? It's obvious about that in Hawaii because that's just the way it works. Scott, you know,
and William, just one more thing. You know, I went to the not last weekend because of the weekend before. Went to the beach with my family and my friend's family, and I was sitting there, and it was Kekahakai State Park here on it's right north of the airport. But I was sitting, you know, we're sitting there under these palm trees and looking across this white sandy bay, and all the palm trees had just been manicured. It's a state park, so they're all perfect. There's no dead fronds on them or anything. And I'm sitting there looking at this, like there are people that save their entire life to experience this one time, and I can do this any day of the week, you know, and like that's priceless. I mean, just huge, right? So that's the kind of stuff I never take for granted, for sure.
Amen to that, brother. I thought about that very same thing. I just went I went body surfing at Makapu'u, which I try to do twice a week. So I went to Makapu'u on Wednesday, and it was a magic moment. The waves were perfect, and I was the only, Makapu'u is a pretty good sized beach. It's a pretty good sized bay, and I was the only guy there. It was just me. And it's like priceless, cannot buy that. And I do, and I do this twice a week, right? So yeah, absolutely good. Scott, what about you, Scott? What comes to mind? What's been sort of your decision process? How did you come to this? Where's your trade-off work? What's your justification basically for taking the hit, if you will, the financial hit in exchange for what we have?
Yeah, I checked out one of the videos you had done before, kind of on this similar topic. And it was a really good. It made me think about it. It's like, hey, if money and possessions are really important to you, then Hawaii is probably not the best place for you. It's a humble state, and our economic potential is just so limited because of the number of people, our isolation, all that kind of capacity. But if experiences are important to you, and like you said, happiness and just everything that's here, then it's the perfect spot. And that's the exact conversation I had. Actually, May was 22 years now, or 23 years. I came here with a return trip ticket. After 3 months, I had to extend it to the end of the year. At the end of the year, I had to ask myself, do I really want to work in a white-walled office with no windows to save my money up to come out here to this experience for 2 weeks every year, or do I want to live it? And I chose to live it. And I figured I'd figured out the financial side and the other component, but I wanted the lifestyle, and I wanted the happiness that comes with it for me, which is the consistent warm weather, the laid back lifestyle, the access to the ocean, the beautiful environment and things. And so that was my discussion with myself internally, and now I'm here 20 some years later because of that. That was a pivotal point in my life in making that decision.
Yeah, that is the trade-off, right, Scott? I mean, the video I think you probably are referring to was I put on the channel, "Can you afford it, and is it worth it?" And the "is it worth it?" I came up with this distinction. Thanks for reminding about it. This distinction is, are you a materialist or are you a spiritualist? And I didn't make materialism a pejorative, like a negative word, but materialist meaning, do you like having things? If you like having things, Hawaii's not right for you because things are expensive, they're hard to come by, you can't store them, it's going to cost you, you won't be happy because the things that you want are way cheaper and higher quantity on the mainland. However, if you're what I call a spiritualist, non-material things are valuable to you. Like here, Auntie Joyce just made a great comment. So here's what she said. But thinking about it, I am, quote, rich with friends, good health, really rich with my money, so security check, and I'm living in Hawaii. So Auntie Joyce just gave sort of the elements of what I would call a spiritual, a non-material life, the non-material values, right? Friends, good health, right? Those are, and living in Hawaii. Those are these non-material things, these spiritual things, right? If you like those kinds of things, Hawaii's a deal, right? Hawaii's a deal if you think about that. The material things, it's a different story. That was the way I put it for it. Let's catch up. Anything else you guys want to share? I'm gonna. There's a bunch of comments. Just chime in when you feel like it. So, Dylan, why don't you make your comments, and Scott, you make yours.
Yeah, same. So I always have this discussion with people that don't have a huge budget, but they want to live here. But so if you don't have a huge budget, you're gonna have to be 45 minutes away from town, right? You're gonna be in one of the more rural areas of the island. But if you put it into context, right, you can either commute to work for 45 minutes or an hour into a city from a rural area where you're going to have a lower cost of living anyways, or you could commute into work here in Kona, where there's beautiful coastline views most of the way. You're driving through forests, cute little towns. I mean, like, you're going to have that either way, but what's going to make you happier? Being on a freeway, bumper to bumper traffic for an hour, or being on a country road that has beautiful views? It's just a matter of what makes you happier, and it's not a downside necessarily, right? And I know lots of people that end up doing that, and they love making that decision and saying, it's no problem that I live an hour away from town, because that hour is an hour of enjoyment when I'm going in, instead of sitting in traffic or public transportation, or the subway, or who knows what else. You could choose your 1 hour and how you spend it.
Scott, hold your thought for a second. I have to kind of share to chime in, Dylan, on what you said. So I go to church sometimes by myself on Sunday, and I've got two ways I can go. I could go the urban route, which will get me to church in 15 minutes, or I can go literally around the island, which takes me 45 minutes. In a convertible Porsche. Which one do you think I take? I take the 45-minute route, right? Because it goes along the coastline. It's got great roads. I see the mountains. I see these amazing views. It's along the coastline. It's just amazing. Up the mountains, up the Pali, through the Pali Tunnel. It's like, wow. It's incredible. And it's a 45-minute, and especially gas today, it's a lot more expensive, right? 45 versus 15. 15's the urban route. So funny, like on an island, right? I turn right, I go 15 minutes. I turn left, it takes me 45. But it's the best. Anyway, Scott, go ahead. What were you going to add in?
Oh, I was going to say, actually, materialistic stuff, flashy cars and things like that actually are kind of frowned upon over here, because it is a humble state. That reminds me of a couple of things. I mean, I have a client that lives in Kaneohe that travels over the mountains, and he says every day when he comes back from work, he says it's all worth it when he pops out the H1 freeway, and it has just that spectacular view looking out across Kaneohe Bay, the sandbar, out to the Ko'olaus. He says at that point when I'm driving home, he goes, every day I'm reminded of why it's worth it.
That view, I've caught it on some videos. I'm going to go back and get it again. That I know what he's talking about. There's a couple of them, but that one where you're coming from town and you're on the Like, and you, for me, the one that's really dramatic is you're coming on the Like, you come through the tunnel and you pop out of the tunnel, and these majestic Ko'olau mountains are like right there. And, to me, it's like, I just kind of want to look up as I'm driving, as much, keep one eye on the road and keep one eye up on the mountains. It's why I have a convertible. And why the top's always down if it's not raining. That's why the top's always down if it's not raining. And that's what it's all about. We got a bunch of comments, and they're all really awesome. I'm going to pop them all in because they're really good. We're going to go through them really, really quickly, but they're amazing. Let me kind of pop over here. Let's see. So, let's see. Alex, come to Hawaii twice a year. Hotel price have tripled since the beginning. Oh, okay. We'll talk about that later. Hold on to that. Alex, Ray's back. Uncle Ray is with us. Excellent. Mark Whitehill is an alumni of the Island of Ohana and has moved to Oahu. The wealth trade-off, worth it. Worth it. Exactly. Worth it. Auntie Joyce, it's all about being happy, of course. And Aloha Supernova agrees, as does Patrick, in the eye of the beholder. Exactly. Just like Auntie Joyce says, she's wealthy because she has friends. Judy says, want to be happy. Exactly. That's what we want. Right. And Norm, no doubt, Hawaii every time. Alex been trying to move for the last 10 years, trying to get my wife to move here, and that's her excuse for not moving here. I'd rather be happy in Hawaii. Don't need all of them things I have in the mainland. Yeah, Alex, but what the wife says is what you got to do if you want to stay married. So don't forget about that one, because you're not going to be happy if your wife's not happy. That's for darn sure. Gianna says, our plan is to be happy in Hawaii. That's it. That's the plan. And Patrick would choose it for the air. Christy, I'd rather live in Hawaii and be happy. I already live on the edge, so it's not an issue. Nothing worse than hating where you are. You know, Christy, that's it. If you're going to, that's the other part of it, right? If you're going to live on the edge, might as well live on the edge and live in Hawaii, because you're going to live on the edge anyway. One life to live, right? Exactly. That's what we said. Chris, I take happy. You'd be wealthy because you're living in Hawaii. Money isn't everything. I wouldn't want to be rich and unhappy. Isn't that it? And really for again, everyone's different. And most of you are in the same, look, we're all here together, right, Frank? One big ohana here. We're all about, you're here because you love Hawaii. So we're all kind of pre-selected to this kind of thing, right? But there are people who do try to, I think it's fruitless, but try to get happiness by buying stuff. And that's why you got people with, 5 cars and 5,000 square foot homes, and they're amazing. This is the one instant where money, in fact, does. This is the one instant where money does, in fact, buy happiness. Mark, I'm not sure where that one is, but let's find out about that. I'd like to know more about that. Dave, not third world, but 2.5 shipping, healthcare, but love it here with great sunsets, laid back lifestyle. That's it. That's the trade-off, Dave. That's the trade-off. Not quite third world, maybe 1.5, maybe 2, but certainly you can't, like the scene that Dylan just said. You can't get that. Joan did it. She downsized considerably to be here, but I would do it again in a heartbeat, because this is where I've always wanted to be. Lifelong journey, Joan. It's a great story that you made. A lot of folks with a lot of wealth aren't happy. That's it. Worried about the money. That's it. And that's the trade-off. And that's, to me, ultimately fruitless. Not for everyone, but some are. Chat's saving $6K a month. Dude, if you could pull that off, God bless you. Pull save $6K a month, starting a new job a month ago, hoping to buy land next year. Keep saving. You'll make it happen. There's no doubt about it. As Auntie Joyce's comment, give me a catamaran and a Jeep and I'm in heaven. But that's stuff, Alex. See, that's stuff. If you need a catamaran and a Jeep, that's stuff. That's not Hawaii. So think about that. Sorry to challenge you on that one. Doug, the one from Chicago, been living in Honolulu since December. Love it every single day. Didn't miss all those snow and bone chilling temperatures, right? Like in February, right? You know what I'm talking about, right, Doug? You know what I'm talking about. Bone chilling is right, through the bone. And Joan and Joyce, you two definitely have to get together. There's no doubt about that. Chow says, living at an Airbnb in Kurtistown early May. Distance wasn't too far, but the 1-lane road going to 25 or 30 took a while. I was going 5 on the unpaved road. Yeah, that's the trade-off. That is the trade-off. All right, I think that's it. So we wrapped up all those. I think everyone's coming, except there's a question. I'm going to go back to this question over here, so if I can, because there was a Christy gave, I believe, who was it? Alex? Somebody gave a question on the hotel. Here we go. All right, let's take this one. So Alex says, we came to Hawaii twice a year. The hotel prices have tripled since the beginning of the pandemic. Why is that? Do you know? It's making coming back here unaffordable. Simple answer. It's a very, very simple answer, Alex. It's called supply and demand. It's a very simple answer, supply and demand. There's a lot of people who want those hotels. There's not a lot of rooms available, pandemic or otherwise, or there's a higher demand, westbound travelers, you name it, but it's called supply and demand. And there are other people who are willing to pay more. And that's the simple answer. Dylan, I don't know if you want to add into that, explain to Alex why it's so expensive.
Well, and inflation definitely plays into that too. And what's going on with the economy. Yep. I'm seeing news stories, hasn't happened here yet, but I'm seeing some places where they're putting like an inflation surcharge on people's bills so they don't have to raise their menu prices. right? So that's one way to kind of build in kind of like almost like a tax is restaurants in other markets are doing that. But definitely when, everything, if you think about everything that the hotel has to pay for has gone up, 8% in the last 2 years, the prices are definitely going to increase. But that's true. And well, the other factor with this is all the Airbnb regulation, right? I mean, there's the short-term vacation rental regulation has constrained the amount of supply of places for people to stay.
Less supply.
I wouldn't call them conspiracy theorists, but there are people that believe that, a lot of that is pushed by the hotel lobby in order to ensure that the demand for the hotel stays high. Because, if you're not going to pay $500 a night for a hotel room and you can pay $300 a night for a condo that has a kitchen and everything else. So that's what they've done is push to, restrain the ability for people to have other options. And that's driving the price of hotel rooms up for sure. But something that overall concerns me, in general about the economy in Hawaii is, at some point, I think we've talked about this in the past, is you're going to cut your nose off to spite your face, right? It's going to get to the point where the world is flat now, and you can go to Thailand and you can go to Bali and you can go to South America, and there's lots of beautiful tropical places to go that are very safe, that maybe 20, 30 years ago, Hawaii had a monopoly on a tropical place that you could go that was safe. And, if it's going to cost you double or 3 times as much to come to Hawaii, people will go to other places. They'll go to other countries. And, long run, you're actually going to hurt the economy here by continuing to drive prices up and continue to tax tourists. Because that's a big thing our state government loves to do is add, we're taxing the tourists, we're going to raise taxes on tourists. And it's like, well, sooner the tourists are going to stop coming if you do that. So watch out.
There is going to be that tipping point. All kinds of fun economics lessons that I want to share. But before I do that, I want to go to Scott. Scott, you want to comment on this topic here of the tripling of prices?
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to supply, but during COVID, when we closed down and then when the hotels went to open back up, they actually opened up like half capacity, only a certain number of rooms, and the demand was super high. So they were able to command those prices at that point purely because supply demand. They weren't even using all their rooms. And then on top of it, the Airbnb regulation, especially here on Oahu, where you pretty much eliminate, I think it was like 8,000 illegal vacation rentals they eliminated. So where are you going to force them? They're all going to go into the hotels now. They have no choice.
Yeah, and so some more economics lessons here. Even inflation, actually, if you think about it, inflation is also a supply and demand issue. It's the reverse. There's too much supply of dollars. So when too many dollars chasing too few things, that's what creates inflation, right? Dollars are worth less because there's more of them, so they're worth less. Then there more are needed to buy things. So that's another one. And finally, I have to do this because it's fun. Dylan, to your conspiracy theory about the, it's not so much a conspiracy theory. It's actually there's an economic term for it. So this is the conspiracy theory, Dylan, that you brought up there. There's a collusion between the hotel industry and the hotel industry kind of wanted to wipe out the Airbnb part so that they can raise their prices, right? Well, it's more than that. It's actually, there's a term. It's called bootleggers and Baptists. Have you ever heard of that? It's called bootleggers and Baptists. So bootleggers and Baptists it's an economics term that moves policy. The bootleggers and Baptists means that there's a God, it's a long story, so I don't want to go into it. But it basically means that there's not just the hotels are interested. There's also people that want Airbnb out of their neighborhoods. So it's a double whammy. And when you have that, it's almost unbeatable. There's a moral component to this, right? People in their neighborhoods don't want to see their neighborhoods turning into resort areas, and that's a legitimate issue. Those are called the Baptists. They have a moral perspective. And then you have the industry that also doesn't want that either, because they're gonna be more profitable if people go to hotels. Those are the bootleggers. So you have the bootleggers and the Baptists. When they get together, boom, it's going to happen. Bootleggers and Baptists. The reason why they call it that is the story goes that there were like laws to close liquor stores on Sundays. Who's in favor of closing liquor stores on Sundays? Well, Baptists want to close liquor stores on Sundays because they don't want people going to church drunk. And of course, bootleggers definitely want liquor stores closed on Sundays because they're going to sell more. They're going to sell more moonshine. So bootleggers and Baptists get together. That's why liquor stores are closed on Sundays, because of the bootleggers and the Baptists. Sorry, gang. I hope. Tell me if you like it or hate it.
Another perfect example of that history lesson was the Super Ferry, right? You had environmental activists funded by the shipping industry to shut down another mode of transportation that would have hurt the shipping industry. So they can't, now they're charging you $400 or $500 a car to get in between the islands, just your car, where you would have had a Super Ferry for $150. You drive your car on, plus you go on the car, so you don't have to buy a plane ticket and ship your car separately, or ship your car separately. And that was the dynamic that ended up coming together to shut down the super ferry. So same exact thing.
Classic
Yeah.
bootlegger and Baptist. Classic. Go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
Yeah,
classic.
and the bigger impact from that, the super ferry was, it was interesting. If you looked at it from a business standpoint, it made even more sense, because like Love's Bakery would load up a truck with all their bread, ship it to Maui. Then they'd contract with companies, smaller companies there, to fill their trucks to come back. And it was a great way for business to be able to do inter-island at a much more affordable cost. And when it went out, at one point, Love's was having to fly their bread to California and then fly it to Maui before they could figure out the workaround for that.
Yeah, man, that was man, the super ferry was we could have a whole show on the mess. I'm surprised no one's done a documentary on the mess that was. Oh my God. I've got too many stories, but my God, holy moly, the time has flown by. Jesus, we've just gone quickly. So let me kind of catch up on a couple of ones over here. Let me kind of catch over here. We had a bunch of folks that let's see, Mark, on the money buying happiness. I mean, you pay more to live here and maybe lose potential to earn more. And so in effect, you're trading money for happiness. Got it. Yeah. Actually, that's a really good point, Mark. This is a place where money does buy, in a weird, wild sense, money does buy happiness, because you have less of it here. You're going to have a lot less of it here, but in exchange, you get Hawaii. And very, very true. Alex, yeah. Oh yeah, forgot about the Airbnb. That's it. That's the one. Airbnb did a big part of it. Val says, lived all over the continental US and in Europe, and there's nothing like Hawaii and the aloha spirit here. It's all you here and your aloha that make the difference for me. Yeah, Val, that's welcome to the family, Val. That is what it's all about. And yeah, Alex, my friends are going to Florida instead of Hawaii. For a lot of people, look, you got Disney World, you got Florida, you got beaches, it's all kinds of good stuff, right? Norm says, we're looking at late October. Found quite a few homes for $250 on VRBO on the Big Island. Big Island has different restrictions, not like Oahu does. Big Island's a little bit looser. We talked about that earlier. Chow says, told that 100K is what I need for a tiny turnkey tiny home built. Is that a reasonable price? I was expecting more. No. You can't buy a piece of land for 100K.
To build out a decked out tiny home, 100K is the going rate. I'm actually looking into it right now. So
okay.
That's accurate. That's just the tiny home unit on the trailer. Doesn't include the land or any of the infrastructure, right? You're going to need a wastewater system. You're going to need a catchment system if it's going to be a permanent residence, maybe some solar and stuff. But 100K is kind of, if you want to really full-size decked out tiny home, that's kind of the going rate right now.
So interesting. So thank you, Dylan. I stand corrected. I was thinking about the entire cost. Like, what does 100K buy you a home you can live in? And the answer would be no. But what you're saying, Dylan, is 100K to put a tiny home, to construct a tiny home on a lot is about right. That's what you're saying.
And important specification, they don't build the tiny home on your lot, right? They build the tiny homes in warehouses on a trailer, and they drive them to your lot. So, because they're not permanent residences, they're recreation. They're technically RVs.
They're technically right. They're right. They come on wheels, and they sit on the property.
Yeah.
Okay, so 100K, you're in the neighborhood for 100K. Then thank you, Dylan, for that correction. Jessica, NIMBY, not in my backyard, folks. Also contributed to this. Jessica, all over the place. There was a big article, Scott, I'm sure you saw about this one. There was there's a grave site in Manoa Valley on Oahu, Chinese owned by Chinese families, and they wanted to convert a part of that to a senior development. So senior development in Manoa, what could be nicer? Manoa folks don't want it. It's like, and there are great quotes, and the great quotes are in the newspaper. Like, we really think that, affordable housing for seniors is a really good thing in Hawaii, but this is just not the right place for them. It's not the right place, in our backyard. Okay. You know what? I got to rip through these because we got to get going on here. We got some stuff to talk. Yeah. I'm glad you learned that, Auntie Joyce, Bootleggers and Baptist, man. It's a look it up on YouTube. It's all kinds of stuff. price for a tiny house on the mainland also, so that's affordable in Hawaii. Technically speaking, Alex, it is affordable. It's the land that gets you. Housing prices are, on par, so to speak, with a given sort of spot, but it's the land cost that's going to get you. And
the important thing about tiny homes, I always go back to, because I don't know how they do it in the mainland, but here it's not a house. Like, it's not real estate. There's no appreciation. It's not connected to the land. You can't get power to it because it's not a permitted home. So what people think of as a tiny home, it's like the definitions are important, right? Because I do know they build like permitted tiny homes in the mainland on lots, on foundations, and it actually becomes real estate and you can resell it and get a mortgage on it. That's not the case in Hawaii. So look deeply into that, reach out. I got some contacts for tiny homes, but make sure you clearly understand what you're doing and what you're spending money on and what the long-term implications are.
Thank you, Dylan. Go to the YouTube channel that you're watching this on. Do a search on the channel for tiny home. We came up with a bunch, because this is not the first time this has come up. We talked in depth about this, and the long and the short was, if you want a small house, get a real small house, as opposed to, you're not really saving anything with a tiny house. It's a trailer on your property. It's legally a trailer on your property. Now, let me work as a temperate. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, think about going to the Department of Motor Vehicles and standing in line for your registration every year. So, and that kind of sums it up a little bit. Not that it's a bad thing, but that's what you're doing. It's not a house. It's a transportation component, right?
Oh my God, that's so funny. That is so darn funny. You're so right. Yeah, you want a small house, get a small house. Don't get going to quote a tiny house, which is a trailer. Go to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Oh my God, gang, we gotta move on over here. We're gonna miss out on all the fun here. So let's talk about our diamonds and deals. This is our properties that they wanted to highlight. I want to give these guys a chance to kind of show what they worked so hard to put together for us. Scott, let's start with you. Palolo, 1.3 acres, $1 million. What is this?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as a deal. This is actually my listing. It's part of a CPR unit, but it's in the back of Palolo, and it highlights a couple of things. In the back of Palolo and the back of a lot of these valleys, or even up on the ridges, you can get a tropical oasis, a very quiet, very private location, yet you're 5 minutes from this lot to Wailea Avenue for all the shops and restaurants, or you're 10 minutes and you're into the Honolulu urban core, but yet you have this lush tropical setting. On this property, it's 1.317 acres. I mean, it's huge, and it's very narrow and long. There's a stream off to the right here in the main picture that goes down some. So you could build, and you got level building areas, so you can build a really nice home. And what I did for the marketing on this, I tried to create a little bit of a storyboard, because there's multiple building areas. You can only build one home. And the simplest portion is right in this one, open clearing like this. And then further down, there's another opening area, and I look at it as like, all right, have the fire pit, have the storage for all your toys, and the gazebo for kind of hanging out. So I did a storyboard concept on the right. Those are just kind of lifestyle images that give you thought and conversation in your head of like, okay, what could I envision going on here on the lot? But $1 million for almost an acre and a half in Honolulu. I call it town and country. You got the country setting, but yet you have the easy access to town.
Yeah, that is it. I mean, if you look at this shot, you're like in the middle of nowhere, and when you're there, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. But if you peep over the tree line, town is right down there, and like you said, you're just outside of town. That is a deal. That is a deal. Excellent. Let's talk about what's Dylan got here. 3-bedroom, 1 bath on almost 4. This is great, right?
It's so funny because we don't coordinate this stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Go ahead, Dylan. What do you got here?
Yeah, no, just one of my favorite properties that have come on the market recently. This thing is almost for its 3.8 acres. It's right off the highway, heart of Kalakikua, county water. It's got an old house on it that has been fully renovated, beautifully renovated. Just a amazing deal and diamond. And if you're into developing into maybe a coffee farm or pasture land for horses or whatever, I mean, just the land is relatively flat. It's been cleared in the past with some big trees on it, but mostly just grass right now. And you could re-clear it and make it super nice and grade it. Just a super killer property. So
I love it.
One that I'm shocked it's been on the market for a week and it hasn't sold.
Well,
So
that's like you said, that's because the bananas have ripened, right? So
yeah,
this is, we're out of time. We need to talk about the market. And actually, you know what we're going to do, gang? So we're going to talk about this at the next. Okay, so those of you that have made it through, those of you that are still here, look, I'm gonna on the next newsletter. We're gonna put a special show for the next show in 2 weeks. Right, we're going to talk about the market and kind of what's going on. So give us your questions. I'm going to put it on the newsletter, get a reply back, pop it in the form. We're going to get all your questions in advance so I can make slides and stuff like that. So get it ready because we're going to plan out and talk about kind of what's going on with the market for the next show. But yeah, Dylan, that's it. The bananas have ripened.
the faucet has turned off.
The
On
faucet
the
is
buyer
off.
frenzy.
The madness is coming to an end. All right, let's do our closing thoughts over here. We got a couple minutes to go. Dylan, what do you got here? What's the quote and why is it important to you?
So this is from actually Jay Shetty, the keynote at the conference I was at this past week, and he said, "Be impatient about the small things and patient about the big things." And I just thought that was a really great perspective about business and in life, where the small details are things that you shouldn't compromise on, and you have to be impatient about it, make sure you get them right. But then the big long-term goals, you have to be patient about those, right? Those take a time to develop, and the small ones lead to the big ones. And sometimes we as humans are, we let the details slide, and then we get really disappointed when the big things don't happen, and we wonder why. And this is a good way to kind of think about it to make it happen. So
love it, man. That's a good one. Hey, Uncle Ray. So Dylan has a heads up for you. Uncle Ray says Dylan will be down on your island next week of July. Ray, of course, is a Islander Ohana alumni. We'll be looking at the windward side. Would like to talk with you or an agent on that side. Ray, reply back to me. I'll connect you with Dylan if not already there, to make sure you do that. And great day to all. Stay safe. You too, Auntie Joyce. Let's see, Scott. Let's get your closing thought here. Yes. Ooh.
Yeah. Hey, I'm actually going to change this. So, and going back to the happiness component, here's my quote: "Ain't none of us getting out of here alive, and you can't take money to the grave."
Repeat that one more time. That's a classic.
Ain't none of us getting out of here alive, and you can't take the money to the grave.
Oh man, it's phenomenal. Well said. Well said. Thanks, Scott. Excellent. Put that one in bold. Things for next time. Hey, Norm, mahalo for another great show. Looking forward to next time. Yeah, Norm, and we will see you here, buddy. Absolutely. All right. And mine, of course, I got to do my Proverbs thing over here. Let me get to see if we can all read it. All day long, the wicked covet, but the righteous give and do not hold back. And what that tells me, right? That tells me it's all about giving. The righteous give and do not hold back. It's really about giving. Givers are gainers. And I didn't plan it this way to talk about our financial piece, but that's the way it kind of all flies together. It's all about, you don't covet stuff, you give, and you don't hold back. All right, folks. That's it for today. Hope you all had a great one. Let's say goodbye. Let's do a counterclockwise, Dylan, and then Scott. Thank you, Auntie Joan, for the great comment, thought provoking piece. Everyone say goodbye now. Go ahead, Dylan. Give us your goodbye, and then Scott, you go next.
Aloha, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Aloha, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Aloha, folks. So you all have a great one. Great comments. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all the good stuff, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Aloha.